Conversations. We have here a dear friend, my friend and a friend of the company, Kunal Shah. How would I call him? An entrepreneur, an innovator, an evangelist. Kunal, I don't know if I'm saying all the right words. There are many more. Who founded Freecharge, that all of you know, which was sold to Snapdeal, who was one of the largest acquisitions at that time. Still is one of the largest and path-breaking. He's been an advisor both to Sequoia and to our own company, Bennett Coleman, multiple times. He advises me. He advises Siva. I'm sure he'll be advising you, Partha, over time. Kunal is a fountain of ideas. Today, Kunal runs a company called Cred, which is a very interesting company. He'll tell us more about it. It's a members-only app that offers exclusive rewards. It is built around the theme of loyalty and credit card members, something that I'm very fond of because I myself am an old credit card guy. Company has launched wonderfully. It's on TV. You guys may have seen some adverts and some interviews Kunal has given recently. Company has raised a lot of money from wonderful investors recently. And Kunal has also been a serial entrepreneur in multiple companies. I heard 4 or 5 dozen companies. I don't know how you find the time, guy. Here we are. So we have Kunal to kick off our capital conversation. So the format that will follow for this, there's no Gyan, there's no talk. It's serial Q&A. So I'm going to kick off with a few questions, Kunal, if that's okay.
Yeah.
You might, if you want to take a couple minutes to say hello, that's fine. But we'll kick off with Q&A.
Sammy, go straight for Q&A. No time for pleasantries. We are in COVID. We should be efficient.
Wonderful. I'm very happy. I'm very happy you agree. So we'll have a few questions that I asked. And then I've also got a few questions that the broader team has given. Now you have the entire core intelligentsia of Bennett Coleman. All the leaders are on this call. All the people that deal with all the verticals are on this call. So, and listen, if you want to ask a question, feel free to as well at the right time. Okay, first question. COVID has impacted the e-business vertical, which you know very well, quite a lot. Some positively, some negatively, and everything in between. What new opportunities, challenges, growth ideas do you see in the e-business vertical going forward?
I think it's going to be extremely hard to predict what is going to make, what is COVID going to do in terms of making some behavior that is irreversible and what is reversible. I think every crisis has this unique ability to give us a snapshot view of the future, right? And even if we come out of COVID, we know that whatever happened during this time in a flash may be the future. Take an example, this Zoom event, right? If you were trying to organize this in a physical format, would have probably taken 6 months, 8 months versus a conversation that happens on WhatsApp and text, and here we are with so many people kind of in one place. And this kind of stuff is going to be irreversible in nature because people will start seeing value in some of these things and not wait for the physical formats to kick in. But some of the stuff will disappear because you realize that it's kind of stupid to do what we're doing. For example, a lot of people are going to buy groceries online for the first time or get food online for the first time. And they'll be like, this makes more sense. And no point in going in car and parking in this mall and going through this whole thing and doing that. I think people are going to realize what is more efficient and what is not more efficient very clearly. And that causes irreversible behavior in my view, right? When people discover more efficient ways of doing something, rarely they go back to the old behavior, right? And I think this is a forced function. Crisis is like driving in Formula One speed, right? Like you are seeing outcomes much faster. That are going to happen slowly eventually because consumers are ready to change their behavior, right? All life events. So in psychology, it's a known fact that every time there is a death of somebody who's close to you, or when you go through a divorce, or you have a childbirth situation, or any major life event, is when you are absolutely fresh for new behavior. right? So young moms, so Amazon loves to target young moms and give diapers for cheap because they are fundamentally going to change their behavior. And therefore young moms are work from home for the first few months in cases, and therefore it's a perfect time to induce a new behavior. uh, Amazon has got the whole world at work from home right now to induce a new behavior, and that's going to fundamentally change things. And we will not go back to old behavior once we started. Uh, but one of the biggest concern I have is that the largest employer of the world was inefficiency.
Wonderfully said.
And when we realize that all these jobs are not required, right? What do we do? And the skills are not moving fast enough, right? So one would say that, hey, we constantly, humans find constantly new jobs and new skills and all of that, but the skill development cycles are really, really slow. So I believe education can be fundamentally disrupted now, because you cannot have the same inefficient method to come to a degree that is mostly useless, right? Uh, I think people are going to find more ways to skill their children or themselves to be relevant for the world in future. And because the world is going to move faster in outcomes now, right? People are going to be absolutely okay with everything. For example, take an example of fintech industry, like video KYC, all these things used to take years and decades of discussion and arguments. And in 1 month, almost every approval that was pending has come.
Yes.
And suddenly we don't realize, but when physical KYC becomes video KYC, we're going to lose millions of jobs, because we don't need all these extra people who just went and collected documents, right?
Yes.
When people to learn to do digital transaction, we realize we don't need so many ATMs, and we don't need that watchman at the ATM that was manning that ATM, and so on and so forth. So the problem I see with India is that the the ratio of people who are in jobs that should not exist is significantly higher than the Western world. And you cannot just like have that situation. For example, many companies are going to take some serious calls on office cost and work from home. And why should I pay 400 rupees per square foot to an office in BKC, uh,
Oh,
uh, and rather give people great privileges and spend time at home? So I think the positive effect of that, I can see a lot many women coming back to the workforce, because now work from home is okay, and actually be able to take care of their kids, which was the number one reason they actually left the workforce. So that could be the positive effect of that, and we can actually reduce the salary costs for the company, because now we'll have more workforce available to be working from home and do their job. We now will accept that somebody can be efficient and honest when they are working from home, and not only say 9 o'clock only when you enter and do your fingerprint, we'll trust you for doing your work. That kind of behavior is going to change now, right? In terms of other stuff, think about it in a slightly different way, but uh, we can't really stop COVID. I think everybody has got, at least in this room, I would assume that we've all got to the realization that we can't really stop it, right? All these measures of delaying are useful, but they're not going to be able to cause that. So we will have the implication on deaths and so on and so forth that will happen. So all of us will have somebody we know close enough who died because of COVID, and all of us will have somebody who has lost a job because of COVID, right? And that is going to create a behavior in us which will say that we need to lay low, right? We need to cut back on our expenses, we need to be more healthy, we need to be doing lots of things, and that is going to fundamentally impact consumption. The problem of India is that we do not have measured reactions as a country, right? We operate from complete apathy to complete panic, right? Like we just sway between these things. And therefore, you will see India has a very unique ability that uh, whenever we rate an app, it's either 1 star or 5 star. There is no 2 star, 3 star, 4 star. We just either love something or hate something, right? And that fundamentally creates emotional behavior and non-nuanced behavior that is going to last for a long time. I am worried that 30 to 40% of retailers will probably permanently shut offline retail presence. Big,
wow.
that's my prediction, and not for short time. It will be done for at least 2 3 years. Like I think a lot of foreign brands will say that, oh, let's put India on hold for 3 years now, 4 years now. And in a mall, when you see 40% or 50% of shops are shut, you can't suddenly expect the sentiment to be very strong, right? And physical commerce will have its own limitations. I, I believe people are going to also realize during this time that the education system is complete nonsense that we have right now. For example, if the best physics teacher in the whole country, if they could teach 1 million students, why should anybody else learn from second best teacher?
Average teacher, correct. Correct.
And this ability to broadcast at scale is going to fundamentally change the concentration of money made versus the decentralization of money that existed. For example, we will have millionaire teachers now versus lots of teachers who barely made some money, right? Uh, and that causes another wave of job losses because to teach, let's say, CBSE kids physics in the classroom, suddenly you will have the best teacher in the country available, and not
You
in the
could have the
country.
best teacher in the world too, for that matter.
Exactly. So why wouldn't you put your kids to learn English from, let's say, somebody in the UK, right? Why would you actually have somebody in India teaching English, hypothetically speaking?
Yeah.
And these borders blurring creates interesting paradigms. There's another view also. For example, I see Partha over here in Goa right now, and I know I'm making a joke, but what if he actually is in Goa? Nobody will care about it anymore as long as he's doing his job well. And imagine he could be a CEO of a global company still in Goa, making the salary that he could make in the US, operating out of India, and probably just being as competent, right? And these realities are going to be normal for people to accept that, hey, the work from home, the home can be anywhere. It can be like, why would we want to stay in small houses in Bombay? We could take a bungalow in Virar right now, because anyways I have to do 4 days a week. I have to work from home,
Yeah.
right? And school system
I really
will
like
become.
the way you are thinking, Kunal.
I think that's my full-time job thinking. So uh, uh, the point is that there is going to be a fundamental shift in how.
Yeah.
So I remember speaking to VC once, and VC is your VC, not
Yeah.
VC. Uh, that it's interesting to find out what the equation of wealth creation is in real estate. And we were just doing a random philosophical discussion, and I told him that the best equation I can think about is the equation of thermodynamics, right? So, for example, if there is a let's say something that is more valuable airport and something next to it comes over there, and automatically the value starts transmitting, like heat transfer happens, right? So
Sure.
automatically any property next to BKC will suddenly become more valuable because it's close to BKC and so on and so forth, right? But Zoom allows the value to be dispersed like crazy,
Yes.
and that fundamentally changes everything. uh, the real estate cost of something that is 60 kilometers away from Bombay drops at step function level from BKC. But if Zoom is allowed, why can't you work from your beautiful bungalow in Alibag
It's true.
and still do an extraordinary work, and maybe once a day, once a week, take a nice ferry and come to work in Fort and be done with it, right? And maybe we will probably socialize a lot more for bonding, which will be decoupled from work.
From work.
All of us have noticed that we do so much of 10 minutes, 15 minutes now, because it's a lot more chop, 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 right? And I think when people realize the increased efficiency of life, we will fundamentally change many behavior. But that's a very long answer to your question, Sammy.
So I think, I mean, that's why I was telling my team that I wanted to chat to you, because you're a fountain of ideas. In what you just talked, I got all these ideas when I was a young land use transportation engineer in America. One of the things we studied was the freeway system that was built, that made transport fast, actually reduced the real estate value in the city centers and took the wealth away from the city centers to the suburbs.
Perfect.
Because you could do exactly your Virar story.
Perfect.
And I asked the question in 2004, 2005, when I first came to India, Why can't I live in Pune and have a high-speed train and work in Bombay and go back?
Correct.
And today, Zoom has given me the answer. Not the Bombay-Pune Expressway, but Zoom
Correct.
has.
Correct.
And you're right. I think these changes, some of them are going to be transformational. And the school teacher example you gave is so bloody powerful. It is huge. Because think about it. We always ask this question. Some children go to a better school. We always want our children to go to a better school, and people are all fighting, paying money to get them. Why? Why? You just have the one teacher, and then you pipe it to 200 million children around the world and be done with it. Now, the challenge that you said is very powerful. Once when I said in Silicon Valley in the year 2000 that internet will increase the digital divide, not decrease it, all those liberals there got upset with me. What I really meant was it'll make money-making democratic, meaning a kid in the Philippines can make as much money as a kid in Silicon Valley. And they didn't like me saying that. But what you're saying is exactly that. Today, that can happen.
Yes.
As it is, kids can do gaming, poker, whatever, from wherever in the world and compete and win. Now you're saying various professions can be transported that way. Very powerful thoughts. And I'm so proud that and happy that all our teams are listening. Out of this will come ideas for companies. Now, let me just switch to another topic, Kunal. Businesses that are engaged in online delivery today, like essentials, you take a Big Basket, Grofers, Amazon, they've all witnessed a manifold growth, like a 3x, 4x, and I've heard that Big Basket saw a 6x demand, but they just couldn't meet it, right?
Correct.
Now, but then there's a bunch of companies that are doing non-essentials, like the foreign brands you said, they're selling clothes, Burberry, Brooks Brothers, Zara. It's not that essential like groceries, right? Now, when we come out of this, they have hurt quite a bit. And those companies, how do you see those verticals come back? You just touched upon the fact that for the next 2, 3, 4 years, they may not come back. How do you see them come back? How do you see the reordering taking place in that?
Sammy, I think I tweeted about this. I'll repeat this anyways. This COVID period made me realize that most of our consumption is non-essential. And therefore, most of our jobs are because of non-essential consumption. And most of our human progress has come because of non-essential needs. But we forget that we are also non-essentials for Earth, right? Human beings are non-essentials for Earth. When companies realize that India is this growth market, right? We are investing for future, right? It is non-essential, right? So Brook Brothers is not making, the CEO of Brook Brothers is not like, oh shit, India is something. They will say, we'll come back in 3 years, let's consolidate resources, right? You will notice that someone like Airbnb will cut many jobs in India versus, let's say, the US, because they'll say, hey, we'd rather wait for the core market to recover, right?
Yeah.
Consolidate and not have, and you will do the same thing in BCCL. I'm sure that.
We'll do the same. Yeah.
So the thing is that when these kind of things happen, we forget that we may be somebody else who's non-essential. India is non-essential for most brands, right? And we'll say, hey, we'll come back for this because we have to take care of our own core market right now, which is completely tanked. And all these things have second order, third order impacts, right? We will not know that, let's say, Brook Brothers or Burberry or Gucci has permanently left the country till the market opens up, right? This conversations are already happening at the mall ownership levels and rental levels, but these are some hard to deal with situations, right? My view is that when it comes to consumers, they're going to be extremely cautious on their spending. India is not US, which will do revenge consumption and say, like, I'm going to start buying 5 t-shirts now. There is no such thing. Indians can switch to non-essentials very quickly. Our DNA is very middle class, right? So we have switched to non-essentials in a button, right? Like we are very happy just living on basics and not buying new phones and new t-shirts and all of that stuff, right? Indians can do this really, really well because most of us have come from lower middle class backgrounds where we live with non-essentials, right? This is not, we're not a third generation who's living with more and
Well,
more affluence and
yeah,
wealth. So we are very easy to switch back to non-affluent or non-essential behavior. So or essentials only behavior. So I think we are going to have a situation where the consumption sentiment will take a longer time to recover, and
hmm,
people will be say, "Chalo, basic saving karo, all that stuff." I've seen a very interesting pattern though. Youngsters are not behaving like people above 35. So they are investing in stock markets like crazy right now, like all the extra money that they're saving. So this is a time where most investment startups like Zerodha has had the maximum growth. So there is this weird behavior, at least the youngsters are showing,
millennials. You mean
and
the millennials?
actually millennials, the younger millennials, not the older millennials, are showing this behavior, and I'm glad that is happening because we need somebody who will consume, right? We
Yes,
forget that consumption creates, and I think another problem I have is that most Indians do not understand capitalism. I want
yes.
to go on record in this group and say that most journalists definitely don't understand capitalism.
I think that I have to agree with you on that.
And I'm not saying I'm in favor of socialism and capitalism, but I will want to have an opinion once I understand it. That's the only thing I would urge for people to do. A lot of times I tell people that MRP is a bad thing for India. Like every product has a printed MRP is bad for India because you cannot charge more to affluent and less to non-affluent, right? You have this one MRP and the beneficiary is rich, not the poor. But this
Yes,
concept is so alien to most Indians. And most CEOs I have spoken to, they don't understand capitalism, right? So it's and this dual personality of socialism and capitalism is not good for the country, right? Because in crisis we become socialism, and then we take much longer time to recover from that. My biggest worry is that if we convince ourselves that we will have a lot more people uh, who will be taken care of through income of a few people, we will we have juiced this orange so much that the only thing that they will think right now to get out of this country,
yes.
and that sentiment will be so uh, aggravated now that they will find a way to get out of the country. And if we lose the 20 million affluent people that we have in this country, uh, we can't recover from that.
Yeah, and that listen, I totally I echo your thoughts on that because a lot of innovation, a lot of capital formation. I mean, capital formation, innovation, and creative people. That's the combination of creating growth in any country. And if you remove the capital out of it, if the Indian intelligentsia that owns the capital escapes, then foreign capital will not come because foreign capital comes through those Indians, and
Yes.
that's a worrisome thing. And they should never be alienated. Those are very important. And listen, I agree. I hope the better ears that are deciding on all these matters truly hear and respect the fact that we need to protect our innovation group that sustains innovation in this country, and that's the way to get India out of the lower middle class to the well-to-do. No, totally, very very valid points. I myself, I'm asking. I canceled the 3 holidays that I had planned. One of them was next year. It's canceled. I canceled the 2-3 different purchases that I had planned. I'll tell you some data. After the 2008-9 financial crisis, prior to that, the United States savings rate was under 3%. Average was under 3%. Now, I just sitting and watching TV about a year ago at home, and I saw in America, they said on TV that the number had gone to almost 8% in 2019. Now, one thing is un-American. If there's one thing un-American, that is saving.
Yes.
Okay, that's so un-American to save money. And when Americans save money, that fundamentally means that a behavior had changed from a cool comfort of happiness, we'll always have what we want, to worry. And that happened then. Now we'll have to wait and see what happens there now. And then the points that you're saying about India, those are all very important points that we need to pay attention to. I'll shoot one more question at you. Based upon your view of investor sentiments, and you have shared a lot of them already on the e-business vertical, Do you think that foreign investors, you already said that they'll pull their investments, your Burberry, Gucci, etc., which fundamentally means there may be good valuations available for companies, tech companies, e-business companies. Some of them are seeing the GMVs go up in India, shifts from big box retail and kirana retail to online retail, online education, things like that. There's growth happening too on certain areas. Do you see foreign capital, foreign investors flock to that? Because we've also heard stories about Chinese capital having question marks and worries. How do you see the investor landscape being impacted by what happened?
Every investor is greedy, but every greed comes with fear. Uh, and a country like India has history of shocking investors with randomness on decisions every now and then, which makes the investors always worry that is this a stable market to invest? While I'm excited to get my returns, but will I actually get my money back? Also, sometimes becomes a question, right? And I think that kind of a worry is never good for capitalism in
Yes.
general. That's one point. Two is our we are constantly flip-flopping when it comes to taxation, uh, uh, and the sentiment that I saw during when we were saying there'll be retrospective taxation, right? That kind of stuff is completely against capitalism, right? Now, having said that, uh, I see there's going to be flight for quality, right? Across the world, and HDFC will give loans to much more stable income customers. Investors will give capital to a lot more stable companies. Investors will invest in a lot more stable nations, and so on and so forth, right? So there's going to be flight for quality, and that's going to take some time to recover. And this is unprecedented in terms of uh, humanitarian crisis as well as economical crisis, right? It is not just like I'm giving a thought experiment, and I don't mean this happens, but let's say if magically 3% of people died one day, magically, like something happened and the disease could not incubate itself, it's just one day it disappears. We would have all recovered in 2 weeks in some time. But when we are going through this slow process, and I'll tell you, there's a unique problem. In 1918, when Spanish flu happened, the most of the victims were young people. So the economy was not stopped because it was not impacting older people and kids. It was only the people between the age of 17 and 28 who were most hit by Spanish flu. Because this impacts above
Was
60.
it because the flu was transported by soldiers coming back from the
No,
First
I
World
think the immunity, it was going to cause the immunity overdrive, and overdrive was happening much more in younger people.
War?
Uh,
Okay.
and it was not so much because of the transmission.
Okay.
So the death rate was significantly higher in younger people. Transmission was fairly equal. Now, in this time, because the older people have a significantly higher death rate, and most world leaders are above 60-year-old,
Yes.
reaction is a lot more extreme.
Mm.
Right? A leader of a company, leader of a nation, majority of them are above 60-year-olds. And therefore their natural reaction, and especially with the UK Prime Minister managing to get himself infected, the fear is significantly more pronounced. And we cannot remove the bias that an individual would have personally on themselves to take decisions for the country, right? I also believe that leaders with a lot of personal wealth will take very different decisions with leaders with little personal wealth. Because these biases are human biases. We all are a function of our own biases, right? So my view is that the sentiment is going to take a longer time to recover unless magically the infection subsides. And it's okay if it comes in second wave, but the first wave is just magically subside, which happened in the Spanish flu. The
Yeah.
first wave did not kill many people, right? The second wave wiped out 50 million people, right? So the second, and the economy did not stop because people are like, okay, we know what this is. There is no unknown thing to it. Yes, the deaths will come. And I think fundamentally, the impact to older people is causing people to be a lot more anxious and take some very authoritarian decisions in these times because of the age bias that exists in death rate.
It's the first time I'm hearing it, and I have to tell you that makes me think, because we are our biases. And I put my hand up to say I am. We're all biased. As much as we try to ask the disconfirming questions, etc., of ourselves, we all have our biases. And then when somebody is making a decision every minute, like a president, prime minister, they have so much coming at them so fast, you have to believe that there's bias. I can say examples of how leaders have been biased, but we'll leave that aside. But I have to agree with you. I mean, listen, it's always fun talking to you, buddy. You give us very stimulating thoughts. Let's talk about cred now.
Sure.
Cred's your new journey. I know Brand Capital ourselves have been in chat with cred for some time, and you and I talked about it a couple times. It's an exciting company, great idea, much needed, zero doubt about it. But you're also navigating the pandemic. Credit card spends are down, obviously, because if you really look at credit card spends, majority of credit card spends will be your so-called non-essential items. Those have gone away. People are not going to shops and malls. So credit card spends have decreased, but then you have also pivoted the business. You're paying rent now, you're offering new products. You're doing lots of things. Tell us, how do you look at COVID and how you are rejigging the business and pivoting a little bit to take advantage of the tailwinds you're getting?
Every crisis is an opportunity for entrepreneurs who are willing to go face the situation. We realize that people are not spending, but they're also worried about spending more money. So launching rent on credit cards seemed like a great idea because people would love to increase their cash flows, right? For various reasons. And we are seeing huge amount of success by launching rent on cred. And we are seeing very large numbers happening in the first 10 days of launch. We also launched Dash as a product which allowed people to convert their credit card loans into an actual personal loan at a much lower interest rate and not a high thing. And I think these are well-timed situations because people will still have to pay off their debt and not incur. And credit cards are 42% APR in India, right? So that can be significantly damaging. And most people in India misunderstood the RBI moratorium. They thought, oh, chutti mil gaya, right? Whereas you only got chutti on the credit bureau and not on the interest rate.
Correct.
And so, for example, if you have 2 lakh rupees pending as of March end, and if you pay at the end of June, the amount is going to be 2,35,000 rupees.
Ouch.
And that can be damaging for a lot of people. And most people did not understand. So we sent out an emailer. We spoke to journalists to clarify that RBI moratorium is not on interest rate. It's only on not getting negatively marked on bureau during this time. That's all. And I think the country is also, our understanding of money is really poor. And there are 2-3 reasons for it. One is we are the first generation that is actually making any serious money in our family. That's first point. And therefore, we do not have elders who are advising on how to manage money to us. Number 2, most people have credit cards for the first time in their family. Like 92% of credit card holders are the first generation credit card owners in their family, right? Third is 94% of all credit cards are owned by men, and men don't discuss financial matters with each other. There's a lot of shame involved in it, right? You will not talk about your debt. You will not talk about some kind of a credit card situation you are stuck in, so on and so forth, right? And this creates opportunity to go become a savior and guardian for customers and say that, hey, you need to do this. Stop doing this behavior. Like, for example, every time customers try to pay lower than the due amount, we put a big warning that you will be charged so much if you pay after 1 month. Like, you don't understand this. And then people actually realize and fix that amount. But sometimes they may not have the amount, and we will be able to give them a small loan and just pay off and not incur the high interest rate. So I think, Sammy, the thing is, financial services as a business is not going to go away till we disappear as species, right? Of all businesses, right? And I think that is the reason we believe that as long as we are around the right set of customers, good news is if spends come back, it's going to come back more in the affluent customers, right? Because they will have a lot more confidence to be able to consume and do more stuff. Will they consume to the same levels? I don't think so. Even in China, you will see that consumption is slowly picking up. right? It is not like back to the same levels. It probably at 40% of what it was. Uh, and but it is significantly recovered in the affluent segment, because they are like, okay, I'm going to start consuming. I'm going to go for my massage. I'm going to go and get this nice meal, and maybe I'm not traveling, which is a huge chunk of expense for most of us. And that is going to be a big question mark. Thankfully, uh, uh, Indians are not into traveling as much as many other nations. So my belief is that that spends will quickly recover with local travel, because we will still step out and do more stuff. But retail consumption of apparel, to furniture, to buying a new apartment, all of these are going to go on a very long holiday.
I think those are all very, very valid points. I think cred. Are you seeing more people sign up to cred in this environment because they have more mind space to do things like that? Are you seeing your customers engage more on your platform, transact more, or at least ask questions?
I think we are seeing a lot many new customers coming to try the platform now, because they're saying, even if I'm getting something back for paying my credit card bill, why should I not use this platform, right?
Sure.
So getting awareness is getting more people to come, so on and so forth, right? So I'm seeing a pattern where more customers are intrigued and willing to try new things than ever before. So we chose to do a
Because
TV ad.
you guys are on TV as well. I see. How is that working out?
Well, we chose to do TV because I would never get this media cost in my life, right? I have to be opportunistic as a businessman to kind of take advantage of that. And we chose that path because of that reason. And I think that really worked out for us. I wish I had a lot more capital to deploy. I would have done a lot more aggressive campaign. But we realized that affluent male were glued to news channels. And I think that was a good indication for us to kind of do aggressive ads. And majority of credit card bills are paid between 26th of a month to 5th of the next month. So we just kind of, concentrated our ads during that time, and we'll probably repeat that again end of May if the lockdowns continue.
And you're seeing an uptake from those?
Yes, because people had their dues from the previous month that they had to clear the next month. So the real lower bill will come in the next month.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Now, I thought that I'll ask the group. The group has given me a few questions. Sure. Since many of them are on the call, and I know some of you, we had planned time till 4:45. So those of you who will have to peel off, please peel off. That's totally fine. But I can ask the questions of Kunal, but you guys can feel free to ask. Sujay Raj, you had a question. Would you want to ask Kunal the question yourself?
Hi, Kunal. How are you?
Hey.
Kunal, there was just a case. Well, I come from a brand building marketing kind of a background, and there was a question that kind of required some clarity in my head. I was wondering in the eBiz vertical specifically, the platforms of late or in the past took off the responsibility completely away from themselves because they were largely marketplaces, and they would pass it on to probably the brands that are getting sold over there. Going forward, do you think that in this post-COVID scenario, where marketplaces themselves will need to be a little more responsible in the way that they kind of talk to their customers and the products that are sold off their platforms, do you think that they will need to kind of get into some bit of brand building in the case of building stature for themselves itself?
I think when something becomes a utility, it requires less of branding. For example, Adani in Bombay is not doing branding to make sure people use electricity, because people use the electricity, right? And it is a norm in many ways. Unless they were truly competing, their need to advertise is going to be lower and lower, right? So, for example, Swiggy and Zomato are two examples. If it becomes a clear duopoly and there is no need to compete anymore on brand because they've acquired most of the customers they should be getting, the need to spend on brand, the need to build brand will reduce, and they'll be only focused on service. For example, someone like Amazon will significantly reduce their brand spends when it becomes established that it's the best way to order things, right? And then they will invest all their money in deliveries and improving those timelines and getting you stuff in 2 hours and 3 hours, uh, and that becomes the brand. So my belief is that crisis will create huge opportunities for some of these businesses, that they will need to work much lesser to acquire and engage customers, and just do more around retention and keep it. So my view is that marketplaces may do brand building not through media, but more through improvement of quality of services, and even consolidate some things. For example, the temporary bad behavior, good behavior, you can forgive, because post COVID we'll expect the same level of services. But very soon, when something gets established, like for example, Amazon is not doing ads in USA. It is like it's like a utility. People just press buttons and get stuff home. Nobody thinks about these factors, right? And every year on year, the average spend on Amazon for every single customer is constantly growing, right? So and that change is permanent. uh, I don't see us resulting in uh, a special change in our behavior when something becomes a utility. And a lot of companies aspire to become utilities that they can keep making money without having to work hard.
Sure,
Good,
thanks.
Thanks, Kunal. Good point. Thanks, Sujay. I have a question here from Vibhor. Good question. He wants to know what communication, branding strategies you think businesses, how should they go about doing that to reassure people post lockdown? See, the thing is, I like to say post lockdown rather than post COVID, because I think a lot of people like me are fairly convinced COVID is here to stay for forever. But the thing is, how is COVID going to be managed is the question. If there's a vaccination, if there is a therapeutics, etc., COVID then gets managed. But the thing is, I don't know if we will have a COVID-free world in the future. Having said that, it would be wonderful if we have a lockdown-free world. And if when we go to a lockdown-free period, what kind of ideas you think companies can think about to use to reassure customers? And you must have some views around that, because you deal with a lot of businesses yourself via the Cred platform.
Well, I believe that the government needs to step in and uh, pre announce early Diwali. uh, uh, and that's the only way we can create consumption, right? If we announce that we're going to have 2 Diwalis in 2020, and government supports you with one extra salary or whatever that is.
Like China can do a Singles Day and a Couples Day too. Cover everybody.
Correct. We will need something of that nature. We will need to, consumption are correlated to festivals.
Yeah.
Especially in India. Indians only allow themselves to spend money during weddings and festivals. And everything else is either fasting of food or money, right? So we do fasting and feasting. So I would say that we need to announce, like, I would say Times of India should embark on a multimedia announcement with brands to announce a huge private Diwali, right? Private label Diwali of sorts. And we will have to announce a festival to celebrate win of humanity or something of that nature.
Success over COVID, something like that.
Because deaths are not going to go away. Means I spoke to some places. I keep tracking deaths in cremation places to know if something is spiking, because I don't trust the test data right now. So I keep tracking death data, and a lot of them are having half the capacity, because they're saying that we have to fire people at cremation grounds because we're not having as many bodies coming, because we have less accidents, less other illnesses, and other surgeries, and all the other stuff that happens on human basis. And to me, just kind of death will continue. But I think the moment we say that, hey, we are going to celebrate life, you saw the enthusiasm that people came out on Sunday to bang thalis, right?
Yeah.
We love to come out of a bad situation through a festival. That's the history of festivals, right? It always ended a bad period, like Ravana died, or this person died, or that
Love
happened.
comes back. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we need to do that. And I would say that the only thing is that we cannot do this at individual brand level. The whole country will have to come together and announce a private Diwali in June or July.
That's a very good idea. Siva and Partha are on this call. If there is, yeah, that's something we should all. I mean, listen, within our own leadership team, we talk about things like this, and it's an idea I completely like as well. And as to deaths, anyway, one tiny bit of data that everybody can get a little encouragement from. My prediction is this year the total number of deaths in India come December will be less than last year.
Yes.
In any given year, we have about 95 lakh people dying around there. That's around 76, 77,000 a month. And then now, the Bombay-Pune Expressway, Bombay, everywhere, there are road accidents, people crossing train tracks, all these sort of things, violence, crime, those things are not happening. And when you remove all that, the total number of deaths of 1,500 from COVID for a country that has about 75,000, 80,000 a month over a 2-month period, you're talking a fraction of that. I mean, every life is valuable. Nobody denies that. I salute that. I accept it. But I acknowledge it. But the important thing is we have to put that in perspective to say that this is something. I mean, listen, we don't have a common flu season at all this year. Every year there's a common flu. There's malaria. There's dengue. And all those things are there. This year, a lot of those problems that have happened these past 2 months have gone away. So then we have this in place, and we are throwing a lot of resources at it. And to your point about coming out and celebrating and giving ourselves a pat on the back is going to be very, very critical. It's a good idea. I'll ask one more question of you. In the current, there's going to be a new set of winners. I sat down in some meeting with Tom Perkins in the year 2002 after the big meltdown of the NASDAQ. And Tom Perkins looked at the group and said, we were all whining because we were all paid a lot of money, young bankers and investors, we were all paid a lot of money, and we really couldn't pay the insurance for the Mark V cars anymore because we lost our bonuses. And then everybody was whining. And then Tom Perkins said, listen, guys, 10, 20 years from now, the biggest companies in Silicon Valley, the best products and the best promoters are all small companies today in their garages thinking. And it's your job to stop whining, to go find those companies and invest in them. And then you will make Kleiner look small 20 years from now. By God, that happened. Sequoia became big. Out of it, Mayfield, Axel became big. Google, Facebook, Instagram, Salesforce, all of them were born in that period. Now, looking at this time today, what kind of tea leaves can you see for 10 years out? What kind of companies, verticals where you think there's new seedlings are there to be born?
I will speak specifically in context of India because that's going to be more valuable for the audience.
For sure.
Indians have this magical need for sacrificing for our kids, right? There is a inherent need that we sacrifice for our kids. There's a big pride in that, right? And therefore we disproportionately spend on their well-being, right? And therefore our spends on their foreign education or any education, right? Like play schools can charge lakhs of rupees now because it almost becomes a signaling power for the parents that my kids go for this expensive school, right? And I think and there's less, I would say, jijak when it comes to spending on kids, right? And I think in crisis, humanity has a huge need to protect progeny, right? And I think we're going to have a disproportionate spending behind children that's going to happen or in their well-being or their education or their ability to deal with the new world and so on and so forth. And and therefore, for example, the reaction of tons of job losses is to make sure that your kids never have to face that, right? So you're gonna go into these kind of zones and take a lot many extraordinary measures. So if I have to predict on how some of these things are going to happen, I think any product or service that uh, allows the progeny to prosper
Hmm.
is going to be extraordinarily big. And US is known to, like, US has $1.7 trillion of education loans, right? That largely happened because people want their progeny to do better, right? Like everybody's thing is, I want to save money to my children's education, right? Uh, and therefore the education company is like, oh, if everybody's saving money, let me keep increasing fees for it, right? And the same education is cost 10x more, 1000x more. But I think we will see more and more spends in these categories. And I think uh, there's a unique thing that you will observe, that anybody who's come out of crisis, they spend on improving their status a lot more. So you will see that all the people who came because of partition, all the people in the US who suffered slavery, all of them spend disproportionately on products and services that increases their status, right? So you will see a lot more consumption on people doing more signaling goods, where people will say that, hey, I am not badly impacted.
Luxury will
Luxury
amplify.
signaling goods, yeah. So, for example, I predict automobile industry is gonna take off again. Why? Who wants to go in a cab which is used by 200 people?
Exactly. I
Uh,
agree.
and a lot of people will be considering to buy automobiles at this point of time. I don't know if it's long lasting in nature, but it will definitely happen.
No, and it's true. I actually heard that on CNBC, that Uber is thinking. Somebody from Uber, some analyst was talking that Uber is thinking about creating different kinds of services, single passenger services to protect the health and make the customer feel safer, things like this, and which basically means they need more cars and more drivers. That basically shows that there'll
Correct.
be more employment coming unless they can make self-driving cars, which is another theme as well. Listen, this has been wonderful. We are 8 minutes beyond time, and I thank you so much. I'll still throw it out to the group. Is there a one question or something? Anybody has a burning question that we haven't asked? Guys, anybody out there?
Yeah, I had a question for Kunal. I agree that a lot of these spends are going to take a long time to come back, Kunal. But I still can't find the reasons for why the alcohol sales are so up.
It's a great question. Choices that we make, and there are choices that we don't make. For a lot of people, alcohol is not a choice that they make. It is what their body craves, and I think anybody who has been part of any habit which they cannot control can relate to that. So I think it shows how deep rooted the addiction is in the country versus our need to splurge over here. I don't think people are splurging money on alcohol. They are, according to me, this is medicine for them.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's called dawa daru. And for a lot of people who are standing in the queue, they feel like they are standing outside a chemist shop.
That basically says that there's a more deeper rooted problem than what we are just seeing on the surface in those queues. And yes, good, Kunal. I am very happy that we had this chat. Very rich set of questions, and of course your candid views. We love that, as you know. We are so happy you decided to sit down with us, and we'll do this again. And we thank you for being a friend of the company, the family. Wish you all the very, very best with Cred, and we'll catch up with you soon again.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.